To my regular Periscope. My name is Belinda Weaver. My business is Copyright Matters. I am an Australian copywriter. I host these regular Periscopes to talk about being a copywriter, the techniques of copywriting. Denise, thanks very much for joining in. I appreciate it. What I wanted to talk about today is the copywriting brief. Now, I don't mean copywriters' briefs. I'm not talking about underpants or knickers. I'm talking about welcome back. Thank you very much. That makes me feel so good. I'm talking about the copywriting brief, and that's the brief you get from a client that helps you write fantastic, amazing, profitable, persuasive, compelling copy, right? The reason it's so important is that more often than not, when I'm writing copy in the past or now, I never got to meet my clients. I didn't have the luxury of going to their office and sitting down and having coffee with them and talking for hours and hours. Two reasons: they were in another state, in another part of the city, in another country even, and you don't always have that much time. So thanks very much for the hearts. So as I said, I was always working with remote clients, and the copywriting brief was what I needed to understand everything about their business so that I could write this amazing copyright. So that's one of the big reasons why the copywriting brief is so critical, because it is how you get to know your clients. And if you don't have the information you need to write great copy, well, you can't write great copy, right? Sure, you might be imaginative and creative and all those kind of things, but you need to understand their business. You need to understand who their target clients are. You need to understand what makes them unique. You need to understand what their products and services are. And that's what the copywriting brief is all about. Now, on my blog at copyrightmatters.com, you can actually see all the questions that I ask in my copywriting brief with clients. But I'm going to step you through it today in this Periscope. Now, the point of the brief is to dig really deep, because a copywriter's goal is to get the gold out of clients. So what I would do is I would send my clients the copywriting brief and get them to fill out as much as they could, and then actually talk through it on the phone. Now, the reason I would do that rather than just taking their answers is that more often than not, someone's hired a copywriter because they're not good at getting what's in their head onto paper and making it sound awesome. So to expect someone to then just come up with written awesome in the copywriting brief seems a bit contradictory, right? Yeah. So what the point of sending them the brief to start the project is it gets them thinking about the kind of questions that you need answers to. And then you jump on the phone, we jump on Skype, and you talk them through it. And that gives you a chance to get them to explain it in lots of different ways, because I always found that once you get a client talking about their business, that's when you get the gold. Okay, I'm trying to copyright for my company and my business. This helps me too. Fantastic. Absolutely. Because these are the questions you need to know. You need to be able to answer about yourself. And when you have a good brief, and this is one of the points I make in my blog, when you have a great brief, it's so much easier to write great copy. Yeah. So I'm going to step through the questions that I ask, but first I want to deal with a common thing that some clients say: I don't have time to complete the brief, or I don't know the answers to a lot of these questions. Can you just make it up? And the answer is always no, because if you can't tell me about your business, you can't tell me about your products and services, you can't tell me who your clients are. Jenny says, I'm about to send my first brief today, so how timely is this Periscope? High fives. Make sure you head to the blog, copyrightmatters.com/blog, and you can see all the questions, so that will really help you. So anytime you get a request a shortcut on the brief, always say no, because if someone can't tell you about their business, then how are you expected to know what you need to know to write great copy? It's pretty simple. That's always one of my big red flags if someone wants to shortcut the briefing process. It does take time, but it is totally worth it. Totally worth it. So I'm just looking at my laptop now because I've got a lot of questions, yeah? So the first thing in my copywriting brief is kind of some header information. I always make sure I know the name of the company, the contact person, the company tagline or motto, because that can often tell you a lot about a company, and the contact person for a project. Would you tell me the name of your blog again? Of course, it's called The Copy Detective, and you can find it at copywritematters.com. So that's copywritemetters.com. I have spelt that 1 or 2 times over the last 8 or 9 years. So yes, that's where the blog is, and it's called The Copy Detective. You can also Google The Copy Detective and you'll find it. Awesome. Okay, so once I've got kind of details of the person and, the project and the company, the tagline, I jump into project-specific information. So this is where I have the project description, scope and inclusions. Remember, the copywriting brief is everything you need to know to write your copy. So you need to repeat what you're working on and what it includes. Is it 5 website pages? What are the pages? Is it a brochure? How many panels? What size is it? Roughly the word count per page. Be clear about what you're talking about, because if you have any problems in the project, you go back to the copywriting brief and you get to say, well, this is what you told me. Is this still correct? So it's really important to have the scope in there. Oh, okay, thanks. You have to go, but you'll visit the site. Brilliant. Have a great day too. Thank you so much for giving me a little bit of your time. You could also watch the replay, and I also record these periscopes and put them on YouTube, so you can still win on that front. So I have the scope, the project description, the scope and inclusions, the objectives of the project. Does it need to make sales? Is it about driving traffic? Is it about driving engagement? Is it about getting likes or clicks or downloads? Be clear about what it is the copy is trying to do. The target audience, who is this going to be aimed at? This is something you want to describe in as much detail as possible. The call to action. What is it that you want this target audience to do at the end of the copy? And often, if it's a big project, you might have multiple calls to action. There might even be multiple audiences. There might be multiple objectives. So, you want to get all of those down. The next thing is there any deadlines? Is it due in 2 weeks? Do they need it in a month? Anything you need to know to do your project management is important to note. And are there any constraints? Like some companies, I know I wrote a lot of dental copy, and they would always say, these are things you cannot mention in the copy. So that's kind of stuff you need to know. And then any keywords. So all this kind of stuff, and as I said, it is on the website, copywritematters.com/blog. And if you look for copywriting brief, you'll see this blog. It's out right now. This is all project-specific information. But the next section of the brief you want to cover is the general business information. So this is when you want to understand the company background and their values. How do they operate, and what are the values that they hold dear to that they want to make sure every customer experiences? What are the customer pain points that they're trying to meet? What are the problems that they solve? And how do they solve those problems? The next question I always like to ask is, what are the barriers to purchase? Which sounds a bit technical. This is basically what is stopping their ideal customer from saying yes. Is it money? Is it time? Is it, their family? I don't know. There could be lots of reasons. You need to understand what is stopping the ideal client from saying yes, so you can meet those objections in the copy. That's often missed from a copywriting brief, so that's really, really important. Things like the value proposition, again, that's marketing speak. What is the real value that's being offered here? And that's usually maybe like an elevator pitch. It's usually like a pretty snappy sentence for companies who have really worked out their marketing. But it's important to understand how are the client's frustrations solved, and what's the real value? And this goes into what's the point of difference? How are they unique? What alternatives are there to the solutions that your client is offering? That's another important thing to understand. So as I said, you've got the objections that you can meet, how they're being solved, what's stopping people saying yes, and what are their alternatives. You have to understand all these kind of things so you can write the copy. And then you also want to understand things like the personality of the brand, because that will help you derive the right tone of voice for the copy if they don't know. And then, you also want to get a feel for any existing marketing material they have, because more often than not, if you're coming in as a copywriter and you're writing a new piece of copy, you need to make sure it's woven in and it fits with their other marketing messages. So it's really handy to be able to see any other marketing material that they can provide you. And then it's things like, along with the company history and their values, you want to understand, are they members of anything? Do they have any awards? Are they members of any clubs? Do they have any kind of industry certification, anything like that? So that's a big chunk of general business information that you need to understand. So we've covered project-specific information, business-specific information, and then we get down to product-specific information. So this is specific also to each project. You want to understand the details of each product and service, what it does if the target audience is different. You want to understand what it does, who it does it for, why it's unique, all those kind of general business things we've just talked about. You need to dig into that for each product and service. So you can see why these briefs can be pretty detailed, especially if you're writing like an entire website for an organization. So for each product and service, you want to know the call to action, why someone would buy them, what the alternatives are, and the barriers to purchase. What are the objections that someone might have? And when you have all that information, as you can, hopefully you can envisage, you have a really deep dive into a business. You understand the DNA of a business. And when you understand that and the DNA of their clients, you can help connect the clients to the business. You understand the problems. You can overcome objections. You can write that copy that is compelling, persuasive, profitable. And, some of these things, thank you very much for all these hearts. I am noticing and I'm loving it. When you have all this information, you can write that copy, but many times clients won't be able to just reel off all the answers. So that's the reason you jump on the phone, so you can actually talk them through. So when you say, what's the call to action? And they go, I don't know what a call to action is. That is really common. So be really careful about throwing out marketing speak and copywriting speak that someone might not understand. So then you go, oh, right, well, what is it you want people to do? And they might go, I'm not really sure. And that's when you go, well, do you have anything that they could download? Or do you want them to give you a call? Maybe you want them to buy something, and they go, oh yeah, we want them to buy the product. Aha, okay, so the call to action is to buy something. And then you can gear your messages for that product about motivating someone to make a purchase. But maybe on the About page or one of the other pages, you want them to give you a call with any questions. So when you jump on the phone with your clients, you can guide them through how to answer the questions that you need to know. So that's, as I said, if you jump on my website right now, copywritematters.com, and head to the blog, I've actually got all these questions with informative, I love it, with some really, with some alternate questions. So an example is, I need to know the competitors and industry bodies that you belong to. So you might say, can you give me a feel for the market or industry you work in? Are you a member of any industry bodies? So I've got this alternate wording that will help you ask the questions you need to know in a way that most clients will understand and be able to give you great answers. So as I said, what I usually do is I usually send them the brief, and I let them have a look at the questions, and I let them have a crack at them, because some people really have their marketing nailed and you'll get lots of great answers straight away. But don't expect that. So then you say, can we tee up a time to talk through the brief, just so I can make sure I understand everything? And then essentially what I do is I turn 1 or 2 sentence answers into 3 or 4 paragraphs, because I feel that the more information I have as a copywriter, even if I decide not to use it, the better the chance I will write the copy that needs to be written, and the easier it is on me as well. So that is my copywriting brief. It takes time, but it is definitely worth it. So, I mean, as I said, if you're watching this on the replay, I hope you found it useful. Thank you for the people watching live. If you want to watch it again, I record these periscopes and I put them on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and look for Copyright Matters TV, you'll find them. But otherwise, head to the website, check out the blog. You'll see all the questions and a bit more explanation about my copywriting brief. But do you have any questions? maybe you have some questions about my process, how I work with clients, or any other information that maybe I've forgotten that you can suggest. I'm open. So maybe not, and that's okay. That's okay. I like these to be, I've got a question. Jenny says, so if they don't want to fill it in, you essentially say no. Not straight away. If they don't want to fill it in, I say, well, now that you've got the questions, yes, Jenny says, because it's too hard for them. A lot of people do find it very difficult, and I want to be understanding about that. So what I'll often say is, would you like to just jump on the phone and you can talk to me? Denise says, so often people just don't like giving a brief, which we'll come back to. So I'll say, would you like to jump on the phone? We can talk through the questions now that you know what I need to know, but it'll be useful for you to spend a bit of time preparing some answers. Because if they're unprepared, it's a long, laborious phone call that I'll often pull the plug on and say, you really need to spend some time thinking about these answers. It's really important for me to know, so let's reschedule the call. Now, the reason I mentioned the red flag is that if someone says, I don't have time for a brief, I don't want a phone call, I want you to just make the copy up or copy my competitors. And it happens. That's the red flag for me, where I say, I'm sorry, if you don't have time to tell me about your business, then I don't think this is really going to work for us. I'm not going to be able to have the information I need to write amazing copy for you, and that's what I want to do. So that's usually when I start pulling back from the project. But I try and do what I can to get the information from them. A question here, we dig Sydney. If they get confused talking about the concepts, then you refer them. I try and help people as much as possible. So that's why jumping on the phone can be an hour, at least an hour for me, because if they have difficulty answering a question, I like to ask it in a few different ways. So I give them the best opportunity to answer it as possible, and I try and guide them through some logic. So I might have a question in the brief, and then I might, I actually have some prompter questions. So in the blog, I've got, this is what I need to know. And then I've just got a comment here. I said to the client that even if she doesn't engage with me, she'll get heaps from filling the brief. That is such an excellent point. But we did Sydney, back to your point, so if they have trouble describing and articulating what it is I need to know, because these are really big questions in the brief. This brief, the point that was just made was is so useful. It's like foundation marketing stuff. So if they have trouble explaining it, I explain the value of being able to answer these questions, and I help them as much as possible, usually by asking the question in a few different ways. And it's even something like, okay, well, if you were at a dinner party and you were describing your business, how would you, what kind of words would you use? Or, stuff like that. So I really try and break it down, and I find that once people start talking, I can usually extract a couple of good points to get an understanding. And I might say, okay, well, I'm getting a sense that this might be the case. Is that true? And I maybe sort of give them some prompters, and they'll go yes or no, and eventually we get there. And the more practice you have taking a brief over the phone, the more you're able to kind of throw ideas out and get some feedback. So I try as hard as possible to guide them through, because it is really crucial information to know. It makes the copywriting so much easier, and I've had so many clients say this has been a fantastic process, which is the point just made. Okay, well, I've got nothing more coming through. I shall wrap it up there. I hope this was useful. Thank you for the hearts, thank you for the questions, thank you for the comments, and thank you for your time. So you can watch the replay. You can also go to youtube.com/copywrite-matters-TV, and you can, thanks Jenny, catch the replay, and you can also read the blog right now on copywritematters.com/blog. In fact, you can read it anytime. Just go to the search box and look for copywriting brief. So thanks very much. That's it from me. Enjoy your weekend, everyone.